When the world was young, and the sky had not yet decided between dawn and night, there was a goddess whose heart could love and mourn in the same breath. Her name was Freyja, the lady of love, beauty, and death. She was born of the Vanir, the ancient gods of fertility and earth who knew the secret pulse of life itself. In the misty lands beyond the 9 realms, Freyja's laughter was said to make flowers bloom, while her tears fell as gold upon the earth. The old songs tell that she was not merely beautiful, but radiant, her presence like the shimmer of sunlight on still water. Her golden hair, they said, carried the scent of spring. Her eyes, deep, fierce, and kind, could calm storms or ignite them. Yet to know Freyja was to understand that beauty and sorrow were not separate things. She was a goddess of love and war, of birth and death, of joy and longing. Her heart was vast enough to hold all contradictions. In the time before men built their first homes of wood and stone, when ravens carried the secrets of gods, Freyja dwelt in Folkvangr, the field of the people. It was said that when warriors fell in battle, half of their souls would go to Odin's hall, Valhalla, but the other half belonged to her. In her meadows the fallen found peace instead of endless war. There soft winds sang among flowers that never withered, and Freyja herself walked among the brave, her voice soothing even the restless dead. They called her Vanadis, the Lady of the Vanir. Her hall was called Sestrumnir, vast and open, its walls glimmering with amber light. To enter it was to feel warmth, to remember that even in death there was beauty. But the world was not yet calm. Far away in the shining realm of the Aesir, the gods of war and order looked with suspicion upon the Vanir, those who worshipped the cycles of earth and the mysteries of life. And thus the first great war of the gods began. The Vanir sent Freyja, her brother Freyr, and their father Njordr to Asgard as symbols of peace. She went not as a prisoner, but as a bridge between worlds, carrying with her the ancient art of Seidh, the magic of fate and spirit. In the halls of Odin, she taught what few dared to learn, how to shape destiny with song, how to see beyond the veil, how to weave the threads of the unseen. Even the Allfather bowed to her wisdom, though his pride would never let him say so. They say Freyja could walk between worlds, that she could travel as a falcon through the winds, wearing her cloak of feathers, slipping silently from the mortal to the divine. And wherever she went, beauty followed. Yet always, somewhere behind her laughter, was sorrow. For Freyja's heart longed for something that even gods could not hold forever, love unbroken by time. Her husband, Older, was a wanderer of the stars, a spirit that could never stay. One morning he left without a word, and so began her endless search. Across realms she wandered, through frost and fire, through night and mist, calling his name into the dark. Each tear she shed fell upon the earth as gold, and the rivers carried those tears to men, who found them gleaming in the soil. They called it Freyja's gift, never knowing it was born of heartbreak. In her grief, She did not become cruel. She became deeper. Every joy she gave, every smile she offered, carried within it a faint echo of that loss. When she blessed lovers, she remembered her own longing. When she blessed warriors, she thought of those she had welcomed in death. Such was Freyja, radiant yet mournful, fierce yet tender, a goddess who could not be defined by a single word. As ages passed, the mortals began to whisper stories of her. Farmers left offerings of honey and flowers by their doors. Women whispered her name before childbirth, asking for strength and beauty. And warriors prayed that if they should die, they might wake not in Odin's hall of battle, but in Freyja's meadow of rest. For there, death was not an ending. It was a homecoming. And the goddess waited, her hands open, her golden tears glistening in the wind. But in Asgard, not all gods approved. There were those who feared her power, the way she could bend the will of fate, the way she moved hearts with a single gaze. Loki mocked her. He said her beauty was her weapon, her softness her deceit. Yet Freyja smiled, because she knew something the trickster never could, that love, when pure, is stronger than any blade. She would endure mockery, betrayal, and loss. And yet she would remain radiant, because love for her was not a possession. It was a force, eternal, wild, and divine. And so, as the sun set upon the first age of gods, the Lady of Love and Death stood upon the edge of the 9 realms. Her hair glowed like molten gold in the dying light. She watched the winds carry the cries of men, the laughter of gods, and the silence between them. And she whispered, "Everything that lives must one day die, but nothing that is loved is ever truly lost." And with that whisper, the night deepened. Stars rose. The world dreamed. The Lady of Love and Death stood upon the edge of the 9 realms, her golden hair catching the dying light of creation. Everything that lives must one day die, but nothing that is loved is ever truly lost. And so began the age of conflict, when gods themselves discovered what it meant to break and bleed. Before there was peace among the heavens, there was war between the Vanir and the Aesir. The Aesir were the rulers of thunder, iron, and discipline, the architects of law and power. The Vanir were older, keepers of life, of seed and soil, of song and secret. 2 kinds of divinity staring into the same mirror, neither willing to yield. It began as whispers, accusations of treachery, of hidden magic. Then, like a storm tearing through calm water, war erupted. The Aesir marched from Asgard with fire in their hearts. The Vanir answered with the fury of the earth itself. The skies cracked with lightning, the rivers boiled red, the wind carried screams not of mortals, but of gods. For years beyond counting the war raged, neither side truly dying, for gods do not die easily. But every battle shook the fabric of the worlds. Mountains split, oceans screamed, the sun itself dimmed in mourning. And through it all Freyja fought, not with blade or spear, but with the unseen. She wove spells in the air, songs that bent the tide of fate. Her magic wrapped around warriors like wind, guiding them, protecting them, blinding their foes. She was beauty and terror intertwined, and when she wept on the battlefield, her tears fell as gold into the blood-soaked ground.
The gods paused to watch, for even in the storm of chaos, her sorrow had power. They whispered that Freyja's grief was stronger than Odin's rage. Where he commanded through fear, she ruled through compassion. But compassion, in war, is dangerous. The Aesir called her a witch, a seductress, a deceiver. They said her art of seither was poison, that it turned order into chaos. Yet Odin desired that same power. He came to her beneath the smoking sky. There, between burning trees and bleeding stars, the two greatest forces of the age faced each other. "Teach me your craft," he said. "Teach me to shape destiny." Freyja looked at him, this god of storms and death, and saw in his eyes the same hunger that consumed men, a hunger not for love, but for control. "You do not command fate," she whispered. "You become it." And thus she taught him, not as a servant, but as an equal. Through her voice, Odin learned the language of the unseen. Through her spirit, he touched what mortals would one day call magic. But knowledge has a cost, and the cost of fate is always pain. When the war finally ended, neither side had truly won. So the gods forged peace, the first truce between the Aesir and the Vanir. Freyja, her brother Freyr, and her father Njordr were sent to Asgard as symbols of unity, and from that day she became the bridge between heaven and earth. In Asgard, Freyja found herself among gods who did not understand her tenderness. They admired her beauty, but feared her wisdom. They celebrated her laughter, yet whispered about her tears. Odin, the Allfather, kept her close, not out of love, but out of necessity. He saw in her the reflection of what he could never be, balance. He ruled through conquest, she ruled through grace. And though he never admitted it, he learned from her every day. The golden halls of Asgard shone brighter when Freyja walked among them, but behind her smile a shadow remained. Odr was still gone. Each dawn she looked to the horizon, hoping, praying, whispering his name to the wind. At night she would take her falcon cloak and fly across the realms. She would pass over mountains, sleeping under snow, over seas, whispering with moonlight. And always she listened for a voice, a memory, a dream. But the wind brought no answer, only silence. And so in that silence she sang, songs that no mortal ear would ever hear, songs that kept the stars from falling. Such was her loneliness, vast enough to cradle the world. The Aesir could not understand it. To them, a god should not ache. A god should command, not long. But Freyja was not like them. Her heart was both divine and human, tender, flawed, and endlessly strong. Still, she gave her light freely. To lovers she offered passion, to mothers courage, to the dying
peace. She asked for nothing in return, yet mortals gave her what even gods could not: remembrance. Temples rose in her name. Offerings of honey and amber filled her altars, and as the wind carried their prayers, Freyja smiled softly, because in those voices she heard echoes of Other, of love that endures across lifetimes. Because in those voices she heard echoes of Other, of love that endures across lifetimes. And so the war of gods faded into memory, but the Lady of Love and Death remained, watching, waiting, loving. And the world turned, and peace returned to Asgard. But peace is never eternal, for in the stillness between ages, a darker prophecy began to stir.
The world turned, and peace returned to Asgard. But peace is never eternal. For in the stillness between ages, a darker prophecy began to stir. Among the halls of gods, whispers grew, whispers of desire, of temptation, of a jewel that glowed like captured starlight. It was said that deep beneath the mountains, the dwarves, master craftsmen of the underworld, had forged something unlike any treasure before it. They called it Brisingamen, a necklace woven from fire and moonlight, alive with its own breath. Whoever wore it would radiate beauty beyond measure, not merely to charm, but to awaken. Freyja heard the tale one night as the wind moved softly through the halls of Sessrumnir. A wandering spirit whispered it to her, of a light hidden beneath the earth, a beauty that hummed with power, and something deep within her stirred. It was not greed, it was longing, the same yearning that had driven her across worlds, searching for odor. For Freyja understood, beauty was not vanity, it was remembrance of the divine. So she descended into the caverns of the dwarves, to the realm where the earth glowed red from its own veins. 4 dwarves awaited her there: Alfrig, Byrling, Dvalin, and Grer. They worked the forge like poets work words. From their hammers came sparks that floated like stars in the dark. And there, upon an anvil of silver, she saw it, the necklace that shimmered like sunrise caught in a tear, Brisingamen.
Freyja stepped closer, and for a moment even the firelight seemed to bow before her. The dwarves paused, their hands trembling at the sight of the goddess. "I will give anything," she said softly, "for the jewel that burns like the heart of the world." The dwarves exchanged looks. They were not cruel, but neither were they pure. Each was a fragment of the deep, proud, cunning, and desiring. "We do not ask for gold," said Alfrig, "nor for power," said Berling, "nor for worship," said Dvalin, "but for love," said Grer, each of us in turn. And so, for 4 nights, Freyja stayed in the caverns. Each night she shared a different heart, not out of lust, but as an offering, a bond between creation and desire. From her came warmth, from them came craft, and from that union rose beauty eternal. When dawn came on the 5th day, the necklace was hers. Its weight was soft upon her neck, Its glow reflected the fire in her soul. And when she returned to Asgard, the heavens themselves seemed to brighten. The gods gazed upon her and were silent, because in her they saw what no crown could command, the light of something both holy and human.
But envy is a serpent that slithers even through paradise. Loki, the trickster, saw the gleam of Brisingamen, and his heart twisted with jealousy. He longed for the power to make even gods tremble as she did. He began to whisper, to Odin, to Frigg, to the shadows themselves. He said the necklace was cursed, that it enslaved hearts, that it had been bought with shame. And though Odin trusted her, the seed of doubt had been planted. One night, when the world slept, Loki turned himself into a fly. He slipped through the cracks of Sessrumnir's walls, crawling into Freyja's chamber. There, upon the moonlit bed, the goddess lay, her hair like spilled gold, the Brisingamen resting over her heart. He watched, silent, as the necklace pulsed faintly with each breath she took. Then, with a serpent's patience, he stole it. He left as quietly as he had come, carrying the light of the world in his grasp. When dawn broke, the goddess awoke and felt the emptiness at her throat. The air itself seemed colder, the world dimmer. For a goddess's sorrow is not like mortal pain. It shakes the heavens. She rose from her bed, her voice trembling the roots of Yggdrasil itself. "Who has taken my heart's light?" she cried. And the winds answered, only with silence. She searched Asgard, her fury blazing like dawn. The gods hid their faces, for even Odin dared not meet her eyes. It was then that Loki was dragged before her, bound by words, not chains. He laughed, as he always did, but his laughter was hollow. "I took it because you shine too brightly. No one should carry that much beauty." Odin returned the necklace to her, but not without a warning. Every gift from the deep carries a price. One day, Freyja, your tears of gold will fall again, and the world will remember this moment. Freyja took back her Brisingamen. She placed it around her neck once more. Its light glowed softly, not as pride, but as memory. And so the legend of the Brisingamen spread through the realms, not as a tale of vanity, but of creation, love, and loss. For even gods, it seemed, could not possess beauty without paying for it in sorrow. And as the night fell upon Asgard, Freyja stood by her window, touching the necklace gently. Somewhere, far beyond the stars, she hoped Other might see it and remember her. But the heavens remained silent, and silence, to a goddess who feels, is heavier than grief. Odur, the wanderer, the god who loved her, then vanished into the endless paths between worlds. Some said he had gone mad from longing, others that he sought a truth too vast even for gods. But Freyja knew the truth that no one else could bear. He had left because even love could not cage a soul meant to roam. Yet she could not let go.
Every whisper of the wind carried his name. Every glimmer of starlight felt like a message, a pulse from somewhere just out of reach. And so she began her journey through realms both seen and hidden, across frost plains where silence grew thick as snow, through forests where time forgot its own name, over oceans that glowed beneath eternal twilight. She searched not as a goddess, but as a lover. Her falcon cloak carried her between worlds. Her heart carried her through despair. Everywhere she went, mortals told stories of a woman wrapped in light, her eyes filled with gold and sorrow. "Who is she?" they would ask. And the wind would answer softly, "She is the one who remembers." In distant lands she wandered, among people who prayed to gods that did not know her name. She sat beside their fires, listening to the hum of their hearts. She blessed their children without asking for offerings, and sometimes, when the night grew still, she looked up at the stars and whispered, "Odor." But no answer came, only the hum of eternity. The seasons changed, though for her time was only a dream. She wept, and where her tears fell, the earth birthed veins of gold. She smiled, and the air carried the scent of spring, even in the coldest places. And so the mortals began to say, "Freyja has passed here." They built shrines from her memory, quiet circles of stone, filled with flowers that never wilted. And though she could not stay, she would pause before them, bowing her head. For every act of remembrance was a light against her loneliness. Sometimes, when the veil between worlds thinned, she caught glimpses of him, a shadow moving through mist, a whisper across the stars, a warmth that brushed her cheek when no wind blew. She would call his name, Other, and her voice would travel through the realms, echoing off mountains, through the branches of Yggdrasil, and into the hearts of those who still believed in love. Pause. In those moments, mortals dreamed of him too, a wanderer with eyes like fire and sorrow, searching for something he could never name. And Freyja, somewhere beyond their dreams, would smile through her tears. Because even if they were forever apart, their story lived on in every heart that dared to love and lose. Pause. And long pause. The Norns, the weavers of fate, watched in silence. They saw the threads of Freyja and Other twisting across ages, never meeting, yet never breaking. One wept, one smiled, one whispered, "This is what it means to be divine." And so Freyja kept walking, through centuries, through myths, through the slow turning of stars. Sometimes she found a memory of him in a stranger's eyes, sometimes in a child's laughter, sometimes in her own reflection, shimmering across still water. She learned that love was not possession, but presence, not keeping, but remembering, not holding, but becoming. One night, under a sky thick with starlight, she stopped upon a cliff overlooking the edge of the world. And there, at last, she felt him, not beside her, but within her. The wind moved through her hair like a familiar hand. Her heart stilled, and she whispered, "You were never gone." Then the stars flared brighter, as if answering. Somewhere far beyond mortal sight, two souls, one wandering, one waiting, finally met again in the silence between heartbeats.
And from that silence, love itself was born anew.
Yet as ages turned and the stars faded into memory, Freyja's gaze returned once more to the living. For though her heart had wandered the heavens, her duty remained with the souls of men. They say that when warriors fall in battle, their spirits are divided. Half go to Odin to fight and feast in Valhalla. The other half go to Freyja to rest in the gentle fields of Folkvangr. Folkvangr, the field of the people. A land of endless meadows where dawn never burns and night never closes. There flowers bloom without withering. There the air hums with songs that mortals never learned but always remembered. And at the heart of that eternal plain stands Sessrumnir, Freyja's hall. Its walls shimmer with amber light, its gates forever open. Here the fallen do not fight for glory. They sleep, they heal, they dream. When Freyja walks among them, the air stills, not in fear, but in peace. Her touch closes wounds that even death could not mend. Her voice is softer than wind, yet stronger than steel. She calls each soul by name. No one is forgotten. The warriors who once cried in battle now laugh like children. The weary rest beside streams that shimmer with moonlight. And above them all, Freyja's golden tears fall as gentle rain, each drop a memory of love, each one a promise of peace. There are no crowns here, no ranks, no triumphs, only belonging. The great and the humble sleep side by side, watched over by the goddess who knew both victory and loss. Sometimes she kneels beside a newly arrived soul and whispers, "You are safe now. You have fought enough." And as her words fall like petals upon their hearts, the soul dissolves into light, joining the song of Folkvangr. It is said that in the stillness between breaths, if one listens carefully, one can hear that song, the chorus of the remembered carried upon the wind.
But not all who enter Folkvangr are warriors. Some are the forgotten, mothers, poets, wanderers who died with love in their hearts. For Freyja's mercy is not bound by battle. She welcomes all who carried courage, even in silence. At twilight, when the first stars awaken, she stands upon a hill overlooking her meadow. There the light of her Brisingamen mingles with the glow of countless spirits. It is neither sorrow nor joy. It is something beyond both, a calm that even gods envy. Mortals dream of heaven as a place of reward, but Folkvangr is something gentler, not reward, not punishment, but home. A home for hearts that gave, that loved, that remembered. And when Freyja closes her eyes, she can still feel Other's presence in the wind. Even here, among the resting, she is never truly alone. For every soul that sleeps beneath her care carries a fragment of her love and of his. And so through them she and Other are reunited again and again, in every sigh, in every dream. The meadows sway with unseen rhythm, the stars hum softly above, and the rivers glow like liquid memory. This is Folkvangr, where death forgets its sting and love remembers itself.
Sometimes, when a mortal dies with kindness still in their eyes, Freyja leaves Asgard to meet them halfway. She appears in a shimmer of gold, takes their hand, and guides them across the veil. No fear, no pain, only light. And as the soul enters the field, she whispers the words that have guided gods and men alike. Rest now. What was lost is never gone. Then she turns toward the horizon, where thunder murmurs faintly in the distance, a reminder that even peace must one day face the storm again. For in the golden halls of Asgard, peace is fragile and envy never sleeps. The gods had grown restless. Old wounds, though sealed, still ached beneath the skin of eternity. And Loki, ever the serpent of chaos, found pleasure in reopening them. He wandered the feasting hall like a shadow, his smile sharp as broken glass. The gods laughed and drank, their joy loud enough to hide unease. But Freyja's calm presence silenced him, her very stillness a mirror he could not bear. "Lady of love," he said, his voice dripping with poison, "do you tire of mourning, or is sorrow the only crown you wear?" The hall grew quiet. Even Odin's gaze darkened, but Freyja only looked at Loki, steady, unblinking, her eyes like twin suns over winter snow. "I know what you fear," she said softly. "You mock what you cannot understand, for beneath every jest, Loki, there hides a wound." The trickster's grin faltered, because Freyja's words, though gentle, cut deeper than any blade.
But he could not stop. "Wound?" he laughed. "No, my lady, it is you who bleed for love that never returns. You who lie with dwarves for jewels, who weep gold for a ghost." The words struck like ice. Yet Freyja did not tremble. She only rose, her presence filling the hall with silence so complete that even the torches seemed to bow. "You speak of shame," she said, "but shame is born only from fear, and fear belongs to those who have forgotten how to love." Her voice flowed through the air like a slow river of light. And though Loki mocked, though others looked away, her truth settled into their hearts. For they all knew the power she held, not in weapon, not in rule, but in the hidden art that bound heaven and earth, the art of Sade.
It was a magic older than thunder, the whisper of fate, the weaving of unseen threads. Through Sather, one could see what had been, what was, and what might come. Through Sather, even the gods could touch the shape of destiny. Loki spat. "Sather is woman's work, deceit disguised as wisdom." Freyja smiled, not in anger, but in pity. "For all your cleverness, you know nothing of surrender," she said. "To yield is not weakness. It is to understand the flow of all things. Even the stars bow to the dark before they rise again." Her words lingered, gentle yet undeniable, and for a brief moment even Loki's laughter died.
Then the hall erupted in uneasy murmurs. Some gods turned away in shame, others watched Freyja with new awe, for they saw what few had ever truly seen, the quiet strength of compassion, the sharpness of truth wrapped in grace.
Odin met her eyes and said nothing. He too had learned scythe from her, and though he called it power, she had always known it as love. Loki, defeated but smiling, slipped back into the shadows. He would laugh again and plot again, but that night the laughter rang hollow, because he had glimpsed something beyond his reach, a peace he could never destroy. Freyja sat once more at the great table, her gaze distant, her thoughts deeper than time itself. The others returned to their feast, but none could forget the silence she had left behind. For scythe was not a spell. It was remembrance, the art of knowing that all things are bound, and that love, even in loss, remains the strongest magic of all.
But remembrance carries sight, and sight carries burden. Through scythe, Freyja began to see threads of time fraying like silk in the wind. The music of the cosmos was changing, slow at first, then trembling with an unease that even gods could feel. In dreams, she saw shadows walking beneath crimson skies. She saw wolves devour the sun. She saw fire bloom across the sea, and from the ashes she heard the whisper of something ancient, older than even she. The end had many names among the gods. They called it Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. But Freyja knew it not as an ending, but as a turning, the death that gives birth to dawn. She did not fear it. She wept for it, because she understood that even destruction was a form of creation.
Still, she tried to warn them. Odin listened, his single eye clouded with thought. Thor clenched his fists, unable to strike what could not yet be fought. And Loki only smiled. He said, "The world burns, and from its ashes something new will crawl. Why mourn what must change?" Freyja looked at him, sadness in her gaze. She said, "Because even change deserves to be grieved," she whispered. Each night she cast her seerther, weaving visions into flame. She saw ships made from the nails of the dead drifting across black seas. She saw Fenrir, the wolf, break his chains. She saw hell's gates open, spilling the forgotten into the world of the living. Yet among the ruin she also saw light, faint but unyielding, a seed sleeping beneath the ash, waiting for the silence to end. She smiled through her tears. "The world will remember love," she said softly.
But her words found little comfort among the gods. They built weapons, not prayers. They forged alliances, not hope. And in the shadow of their fear, the first cracks of fate began to open. Freyja withdrew to Folkvangr, her meadow of souls. There she spoke to the fallen, asking if they still dreamed of peace. They answered her with silence, yet in that silence she felt understanding. She knew they would rise again when the world demanded courage, not for war, but for renewal. At twilight, she walked among the rivers that gleamed like veins of gold. Every reflection showed a different world, one ending, one beginning, and between them, her face, the mirror of both love and loss. The Norns wove faster, time tightened. The air itself grew heavy with destiny, her Brisingamen shining faintly against the coming dark. The wind carried the scent of iron, smoke, and prophecy.
She closed her eyes, feeling the pulse of the cosmos beneath her feet. "Odin will fall," she whispered. "The sons of thunder will fade. The wolf will break the sky, and I will stand between what was and what must be." Her tears fell again, drops of gold vanishing into the void. Each one became a star, marking the way for those who would live after the gods. The heavens trembled. The first thunder of Ragnarok rolled through the void. But Freyja did not turn away. She lifted her gaze to the storm and whispered, "When the world forgets the light, love will remember it." And as the dawn of destruction rose, she smiled, not in despair, but in knowing. For endings were never final. They were only doors the heart must pass through to find itself again.
And as the dawn of destruction rose, she smiled, not in despair, but in knowing. For endings were never final. They were only doors the heart must pass through to find itself again. The sky cracked like glass. The sun dimmed, swallowed by the wolf Fenrir's jaws. The moon bled into the sea, and the great tree Yggdrasil shuddered from root to crown. Thunder roared, not from clouds, but from the bones of the earth itself. The gods gathered for the last time. Odin with his spear, Thor with his hammer, Freyja with nothing but her voice. She stood upon the hill of Folkvangar, her golden hair aflame in the twilight. Below her, the souls of the fallen rose once more, not to conquer, but to defend what still remained. Their armor shimmered with memory, their swords forged from courage, not metal. And as the armies clashed, the heavens burned, the rivers turned to fire, the winds carried ashes instead of songs. But still Freyja sang.
Her voice cut through the storm like light through smoke. It carried neither command nor fear, but remembrance. Every note was a story of mothers, of lovers, of warriors who had lived and lost and loved again. Even the flames seemed to bow before her melody, for in her song was something the fire could not consume: mercy. Odin fell beneath the wolf's fangs. Thor fell beneath the serpent's venom. The sky itself split open, spilling stars into the sea. Loki stood among the chaos, his laughter twisted into grief, for he had wanted freedom, but found only emptiness. Freyja's tears fell once more, golden against the red of ruin. Each drop landed softly upon the burning ground, and wherever they touched, the fire dimmed. The earth sighed, as though remembering peace. But the storm did not stop. Mountains fell, oceans swallowed themselves. The world that once sang now whispered its final breath. Through it all, Freyja stood unmoved. Her breezing ammon gleamed faintly, reflecting both the end and the beginning. In her silence, she carried every name, every prayer, every heartbeat ever uttered. Then, at last, the fire grew tired, the wind softened, the smoke thinned,
And in that endless hush Freyja knelt, placing her hand upon the cooling earth. This is not death, it is sleep. And the world, though broken, listened.
Ash fell like snow. The rivers ran black, then still. Above the ruins, the first star returned, faint, trembling, but alive. Freyja rose, her tears glowing softly in the dark. Where they fell, sprouts of green pushed through the ash. Tiny shoots of life, fragile yet fearless. She looked to the horizon and spoke to the silence. "Begin again," she said. And so it did. From her sorrow, new earth bloomed. From her memory, new gods would rise. And from her love, the love that endured flame and time, the world learned how to be born once more. And thus, even in the ashes of Ragnarok, the song of Freyja lingered, soft, eternal, and alive.
In the silence after fire, the world took its first fragile breath. Smoke drifted away like a forgotten dream. The sky, once torn and blood-red, opened to reveal faint traces of dawn. Freyja stood upon the newborn earth. Around her feet, the ground still whispered with heat, yet tiny flowers pushed through the ash. Each petal carried a shimmer of gold, her tears reborn as life. She knelt, touching the soil, and felt its pulse, slow, steady, awake. "This is how worlds begin," she whispered, "not in glory, but in remembrance." Her tears fell once more, but this time they were gentle. Each one that touched the earth became a seed, each seed a promise, each promise a story waiting to be told. Ages passed. From the warmth of her tears grew forests and rivers, creatures and clouds, and among them the first of humankind, fragile, curious, filled with the same longing that once guided the gods. They did not know her name, yet they felt her in the rhythm of their hearts. They saw her in sunlight touching water, in the gold of evening fields, in the quiet comfort of love returned. They began to tell stories of a woman of light who wept the world alive, of a goddess whose sorrow turned to mercy, of a mother who never judged, only remembered. And wherever her name was spoken, the air grew warmer, the earth softer. For even without temples, she was worshipped in every act of kindness. The mortals called her many names, but in the quiet of their dreams, one name always returned like a soft echo: Freyja. Through their stories, she lived again. Not in divine halls or golden chariots, but in the smallest of moments. A child's laughter, a lover's touch, a mother's prayer whispered before sleep. She watched them from beyond the veil, her smile calm, her eyes bright with memory. She no longer wept for what was lost. She wept for what was found. For she saw that the essence of the gods had not perished in flame. It had simply changed shape, woven into every breath, every kindness, every fleeting spark of wonder. And in that moment, Freyja understood the greatest truth of all. Immortality was not endless life. It was endless love remembered. And the world, her world, kept remembering. The rivers carried her name in their murmurs. The wind whispered her song through the trees. Even the stars, silent and patient,
shimmered with her golden light. Wherever beauty met sorrow, she was there. Wherever endings became beginnings, she waited. Wherever hearts broke and healed again, she smiled. Her Brisingamen gleamed still, not upon her neck, but in the heart of creation itself. It shone within every sunrise, every act of love, every moment when darkness yielded to light. And so, in the golden hush between night and morning, the voice of the goddess returned once more, not as thunder, but as a whisper. Remember, all that is loved is never truly lost. And the world dreamed again. Dreams became centuries, centuries became stories, and through them the memory of the goddess lived on. Freyja no longer walked the fields of Folkvanger, nor did she sit beneath the halls of Asgard. Her spirit had become something quieter, something everywhere, woven into the light that touches the sea at dawn and the hush that settles before the first snowfall. Men forgot her name, but not her touch. Women forgot her temple, but not her strength. Children forgot her image, but not her kindness. For though the world had changed, her presence lingered in all that was gentle, all that was beautiful, and all that remembered love. And so, the goddess who once wept for the world became the breath within it. When the sun rises over quiet lakes, her reflection dances upon the water. When the rain falls softly upon the earth, it carries her laughter in each drop. And when hearts break and heal again, her golden tears shine within them. Poets would later write of her without knowing her name. Painters would fill their canvases with her light. Lovers would speak her truth without realizing its origin. Because Freyja had become what all creation seeks to become: meaning. Time no longer bound her. The gods who once ruled with thunder and flame faded into legend. But her story remained, not carved in stone, but carried in breath. And breath, unlike monuments, never dies. Even now, in the quiet between stars, her whisper drifts through the void. Love, and you will find me. The words travel through galaxies, through dreams, through the pulse of every living thing. They do not demand, they simply remind. For Freyja's story was never one of conquest or perfection. It was a story of remembering that beauty and pain, joy and loss are all threads of the same tapestry. To love the world is to accept its sorrow. To weep for it is to bless it. And so she watches, not from thrones, but from moments, from the quiet hand that comforts, from the courage that forgives, from the peace that follows storms. Her Brisingamen still glows, unseen, among the constellations, a circle of light that never breaks, even when night is deepest. And when the final dream fades, when the last fire cools and all things fall to quiet, the world will close its eyes once more, and in that sleep it will remember her. For Freyja is not gone. She is every beginning, every ending, and every heart that dares to keep beating between them. Her voice is the echo of the first dawn, her silence the promise of the last night, and her golden tears the stars themselves. So sleep now, beneath her light. The world is safe in her memory, and as you drift into dreams, remember her final truth. All that is loved is never truly lost. And thus ends the tale of Freyja, the lady of love and death, the singer of worlds, whose heart still beats softly within the silence of every dream.